Welcome to City of Story. Before listening, please consider giving the channel a like and subscribing. When I discovered the photo album, I was tidying up at my son's house. It turned out that my husband, John, for 1 month each year, under the pretense of business trips, had actually been traveling across mountains and oceans with his first love from youth, from age 50 to 75. From the snow-covered peaks of Mount Everest to the crystal-clear waters and white sands of Hawaii, from youthful dark hair to silver strands, their footprints had wandered across the entire country. Half a lifetime seemed to have passed in the blink of an eye. I sat motionless the entire afternoon, trying to recall what I had done during those 25 years. Cooking 3 meals a day, caring for my in-laws, raising children. I had lived a life of constant motion and endless responsibility. And later, after my children were married, I helped them take care of the grandchildren. That Friday afternoon, my son and his family had gone on a weekend road trip. Before they left, my grandchild sweetly asked me to take care of their beloved cat. I agreed without hesitation, smiling and telling them to enjoy their trip. After refilling the cat's food and cleaning the litter box, a breeze swept through the house, scattering dust across the table. I sighed and picked up a rag to start wiping. That's when I noticed the photo album sitting on the coffee table in the living room. I flipped it open without much thought, assuming it belonged to my grandchild, but soon realized it was no ordinary album. It was more like a travel diary. The backgrounds in each photo varied greatly, but the 2 main figures remained the same, a man and a woman. They stood side by side in front of the camera, their hair fully gray, yet their smiles radiant and youthful. From the snow-blanketed peaks of Everest to the pristine beaches of Hawaii, to vast grasslands and crescent-shaped desert oases year-round, all across the nation. My hands trembled, barely able to hold the album. The most recent photo showed them holding hands in front of a waterfall cascading from the clouds. On the back, in handwriting I instantly recognized as John's, were the words, Paris, John, Sharon, taken in September 2023. There he was, wearing a blue dress shirt, and beside him, Sharon, dressed in a traditional Chinese qipao, both standing among majestic mountains. Wrinkles lined their eyes and brows, but they looked like soulmates. Yet John was the husband I had lived with for nearly 50 years, and Sharon, she was the girl he had once loved but never married. I remembered that blue shirt clearly. Last September, he had told me he was traveling to another province to give lectures. Before he left, I had carefully ironed every shirt for him, including that one. Flipping through the photos, I saw dates written on the back of each one for every year, never missing a beat. Some had lines of poetry, or a fleeting thought, scribbled on them. I turned the pages quickly. The older photographs had begun to yellow, and time itself seemed to swell into the air around me. Their youthful faces slowly emerged. One image showed them at the snowy peaks of Mount Everest. Written on the back, if someday we can bathe in snow together, then this life, no matter what, we've grown old side by side. John, Sharon, taken November 1998. The ink on the handwriting had faded, but the strokes remained bold and forceful, as if slashing water, with the blade unyielding and resolute. Indeed, from youth to old age, from dark hair to silver strands, they had journeyed together through a lifetime. How could that not be called growing old side by side? But how laughable it all seemed now. My husband, John, a renowned 75-year-old physician, had spent 1 month each year, not on business trips as he claimed, but traveling the mountains and seas with his first love. From the age of 50 to 70-5. My chest burned as though a fire had been lit within, scorching every organ. At the same time, it felt as though a cold wind had slammed into me, making it impossible to keep my eyes open. I wanted to call John immediately, to demand the truth, but then I stopped myself. Why had he hidden it from me for 25 years? When I finally pulled out my phone, it felt as though all strength had drained from my body. My hands trembled, my limbs turned cold, and tears streamed down my face. The sun was setting in the west, casting a gloom over the entire world. I sat dazed on the floor, unable to comprehend how my life had come to this. It was already dark when John called me several times, urging me to come home. I tucked the album into my bag and slowly made my way back. A walk that usually took 10 minutes stretched into half an hour. When I arrived, John was at his computer, focused on typing up a report. He had aged, but his posture remained upright, his demeanor calm and composed just like in his youth. "You're late. What took you so long? Why haven't you made dinner yet?" I glanced at the empty dining table and the cold, lifeless kitchen. Then, unexpectedly, I laughed. "If I don't cook, don't you know how to make a meal yourself?" He looked surprised, raising an eyebrow. "What's wrong? Bad mood? Did our son upset you again? If you're unhappy, let's eat out tonight. Actually, I have to leave town again next week," he added casually, closing his laptop and heading toward the entryway to change shoes. "While I'm gone, I'll have to trouble you to take care of things at home. Come on, let's be lazy tonight and enjoy life like young people do." Even though age had weathered his face, his eyes still held the warmth I remembered. "Can you not go any more?" I asked softly. "What? I mean, not just this time, don't go any more, ever." He furrowed his brow, puzzled. "What are you talking about? This is my job. You know that professors of my caliber are expected to travel and give lectures." "John, you're 75 now," I said gently, "and let's be honest. Do you really need to keep doing this? Haven't you had the option to stop for years?" He paused and looked at me strangely. "What are you implying? Are you accusing me of something? Haven't you seen the news every time I've gone to teach?" It was true. Whenever John traveled for work, there were always media reports. I had never doubted him. Not even once. And that's how he managed to deceive me for 25 years. All those years. I believed he was overworked and exhausted, and I tried to take care of everything at home so he wouldn't have to worry. That's what marriage is about, isn't it? Mutual understanding. John and I had never shared some passionate love story, but we respected each other deeply. For nearly 50 years, we lived in peace without a single argument. I thought that was enough, that this, too, was a kind of love. I raised my eyes to look straight into his. For the first time, I saw irritation and anger flicker behind his gaze. And in that moment, everything I believed in crumbled. So I took out the album. "John, what does this mean?" His eyes widened in rage as he nearly snatched the album from my hands. His voice rose, sharper than I'd heard in decades. "You went through my things. Emma, we've been married our whole lives and you snooped through my belongings. I can't believe this. Is this who you really are?" "Yes, Sharon and I had feelings for each other when we were young," he snapped. "But now we're just old friends. Isn't a man allowed to remember his youth? All my life, I had seen his back countless times, the white lab coat as he walked into the OR, the hunched silhouette over reports late at night, and now, this, the back of him turning away from home. A strange, deep sorrow welled up in my chest. For the first time in our decades-long marriage, John and I fell into a cold war. That night, he came home late, saw the dark, quiet house, and slammed the study door without a word. In the days that followed, I stopped cooking and washing his clothes. At the table, there was only one meal. He left early each morning, came back late, and his dirty laundry piled high. The once crisp shirts I used to iron were now crumpled and tossed aside. That's when our son and his family returned from their trip. My grandson handed me 2 small scented sachets. "Grandma, I got these for you and Grandpa, 1 each, okay?" I smiled, patted his head. "Thank you, Harry." My daughter-in-law gently nudged him away, then cautiously asked, "Mom, are you and Dad okay while we were gone?" I kept my head down, picking at my food, saying nothing. Henry, my son, couldn't hold back. "Mom, what are you so upset about?" Right from the first sentence, it was a scolding. His tone was impatient. "Yes, the album was Dad's. He left it at my house on purpose. But isn't it better you saw it than stayed in the dark and got angry? Mom, you're not young anymore. Why dwell on these romantic matters? You and Dad getting into a fight like this, what would people think? And don't forget how much he's sacrificed for this family. He's old now. What's wrong with reminiscing a little? As for Aunt Sharon, if met her, she's kind, respectful, and understanding. They're just revisiting memories. Why must you overreact?" He kept going and going. I said nothing. Then, as he reached for his favorite dish, I calmly stood up, picked it up, and dumped it straight into the trash. He froze, stunned. "Mom, are you crazy? What the hell are you doing?" My daughter-in-law tugged on his sleeve, but he only grew angrier. He threw his chopsticks down with a loud clatter. "Fine, if you're not cooking for me anymore, then don't. Who needs your cooking? Dad was right. Nobody can understand you." And with that, he stormed out with his wife and child in tow. My grandson was reading in his room when he was abruptly pulled away, his eyes reddening as he was on the verge of tears. Suddenly, I recalled that when he was his grandson's age, he too would look up at me, embrace me, and promise to buy me the best things in the world when he grew up. Perhaps people's hearts do change. Even the child I raised is no exception. When Henry was young, John was preoccupied with work and couldn't care for him. I was the one who nurtured and raised him day by day. Back then, I was the person he loved and was closest to. Now that John has become successful, he can provide protection and build a future for him. Naturally, he holds more weight than I do. In the middle of the night, I got up to use the bathroom and saw John crouching in front of the washing machine, fumbling with the buttons in confusion. He looked at me, wanting to speak but hesitated. I turned back to the room, but he called out to me, his voice filled with an unusual sense of grievance. "Emma, all my clothes are dirty. I have nothing left to wear." I shook my head, stepped forward, and pressed the stop button for him. The washing machine began to fill with water. "I'm sorry, Emma. It's my fault for hiding it from you all these years," he said, lowering his head and hesitantly adding, "But please believe me, I never intended to break up this family." I looked at him for a long time before sighing softly, "Let's get a divorce." He abruptly looked up, his cloudy eyes shimmering. After that candid conversation with John, the heavy feeling in my chest lightened considerably. I began to feel more clear-headed after a period of confusion. John and I are 5 years apart in age. We met through a friend's introduction. At that time, he was a newly graduated medical student, and I was an ordinary company employee. Though it was a setup, there was some affection involved. I knew he had a 3-year relationship during university, but after graduation, it ended due to opposition from her parents, leaving it unresolved. And just like that, 50 years have passed. When John was still an intern, he devoted most of his time to work handling data with his mentors, assisting in surgeries, diagnosing patients, and taking night shifts. I took care of everything at home. His salary was minimal back then, and I didn't dare to quit my job. During the day, I worked, and at night, I cared for his severely ill mother and our young child. Even in the final days of his mother's life, I was the one by her side, holding her hand as she passed away peacefully. At the time, John had rushed home from the operating room, his hands trembling as he gripped mine. Emma, thank God for you." After that, his career began to take off, and life gradually became visibly easier. I had thought that we had overcome life's hardships together and were finally entering a peaceful chapter. I never imagined that when I turned 70 and John 75, it would all come to an end. Before I retired, I was an accountant, my life filled with numbers and ledgers, and yet, the most difficult calculation I would ever have to make was how to divide the marital assets from a 50-year marriage. I moved into a small home under my own name and left the divorce agreement for John. He held that thin piece of paper in his hand, silent for a long time. I told him gently, "It's all right. The law gives us 30 days to reconsider. You can take your time." As I packed up my things, I discarded many old belongings, items I had held on to for decades, unable to throw them away but never really needing them, either once boxed and taken out, left me with a strange sense of relief. Perhaps this was what it truly meant to let go. After hearing about my decision to divorce, my son sent me dozens of voice messages. I listened to a few. None were any different. They accused me of not respecting my age, of being stubborn and selfish. I hit skip, perhaps out of anger. After I moved out, he didn't come to visit me even once. At 70, I suddenly found myself with a wealth of free time. After 2 days of rest, I signed up for a travel tour first, visiting New York, then heading up north, along a scenic route. I traveled for 30 days straight, when I no longer had to worry about saving money. I realized travel could truly nourish both the body and soul. I took photos along the way and, learning from the younger generation, posted snapshots with the scenery on social media. To my surprise, one of those photos received a flood of likes, including one from John. He even left a comment, "Emma, wishing you happiness, please. Take care of yourself." Several mutual friends replied on my behalf, their words full of admiration and praise for the love they believed we still shared. John also sent me more than a few private messages, sometimes to ask where household items were kept, sometimes sharing a photo of the noodles he had cooked himself, or even a weather forecast, reminding me to bring an umbrella or wear an extra layer. I didn't respond to a single message. My heart was calm, utterly still. When my trip ended, I received an unexpected visitor. It wasn't until Sharon came to find me that I realized something wasn't quite right. John had said he would be leaving town again the following week, but more than a month had passed, and he hadn't gone anywhere, so that's why Sharon had come all the way to our city, because John hadn't kept his word this year. She sat across from me, smiling gracefully, dressed in an elegant high-end sum. Her face bore the traces of time, but her manner and poise radiated refinement that age could not erase. Compared to her, I truly looked like a simple old woman. They say that what we cannot have in our youth will haunt us for a lifetime, especially the person we could never have. It was no wonder John saw her as the great love of his life. Emma, isn't it? You're younger than John, which means you're also younger than me. I should call you little sister. She smiled gently. I'm sorry for causing a rift between you and John. I said nothing. Still smiling, she continued softly. Emma, little sister, you really don't need to be upset over this. John and I were simply fulfilling a promise we made decades ago. You might not know this, but when we were in university, we promised to travel the world together. At our class reunion in 1998, we realized we were growing old. If we didn't go then, we might never have the chance. It sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? A promise made at 20, finally carried out at 50. I smiled as well. So you've traveled all the way here, sitting across from me now just to tell me the love story between you and my husband. Emma, she said with a serene smile, marriage is marriage, and love is love. I don't believe a woman who has lived more than half her life could still fail to tell the difference. You might not believe it, but John and I never intended to hurt you. So I stood up, placed some cash on the coffee table, looked her straight in the eyes, and said with quiet conviction, I don't know whether one can truly separate marriage from love, but I do know one of you could have told me sooner. He's just a pathetic old man. If you want him, you can have him. I've never been one for coffee, nor do I particularly enjoy it. But since you made the effort to come all this way, I figured I should show a bit of courtesy. Oh, and one more thing, it's really quite pitiful, isn't it? To be the other woman your whole life, only to grow old and still be the other woman. I smiled again. No wonder you were in such a hurry to show up this year. Just like you said, if you hadn't come quickly, there might not have been time left. Her expression shifted ever so slightly. I turned and walked away. But just outside the cafe door, I saw John standing there, his face pale as chalk. He reached out to stop me. Emma, I took a step back. Have you signed the papers? His hand fell limply to his side. He stammered in a hoarse voice. It's not what you think. Emma, do you really want to do this? We've spent a lifetime together. Surely we can still. John, I cut him off, my voice cold. When will you finally take responsibility? You didn't have the courage to fight for your true love at 22, afraid to stand up to her parents. At 50, even with all your success, you didn't have the decency to be honest about your marriage or your affair. And now, at 75, you still lack the guts to own up to your actions. You've always been like this, hiding behind women, wanting both sides of the story. But the world doesn't work that way, does it? He stood frozen, a look of confusion and fear clouding his face, and in the end, John signed the divorce papers. My son Henry couldn't hold back any longer. He called me furious mom. I really don't understand what you're thinking. You're already old, and now you suddenly want a divorce. After a whole lifetime together, you just walk away like that. And what about the division of assets? Dad has spoiled you enough. Just look at the settlement. Do you think that's fair? Most of the income in this household came from him. What right do you have to take so much? I calmly replied, you're over 30 now. Surely you've heard of the concept of marital joint property. And think about it, during the 20 years before you were grown. Who was it that took care of this family? Besides, yes, I'm older, but I'm only 70. Does that mean I should be dead already? He was momentarily stunned, then forced, his voice louder in frustration. Fine, maybe you contributed to the family too. But everything you did, cooking, cleaning, that's just what a housekeeper does. You could have paid someone to do all that. Why should you take such a large share from my father? I laughed, not from amusement but from sheer anger. Henry, do you think I'm just a piece of furniture? Your father is the one who broke his vows. Even if he walks away from this with nothing, it's no more than what he deserves. Instead of standing here trying to pick a fight with me, You'd do well to consider that when your dear Aunt Sharon becomes your stepmother, your father's remaining assets will have another legal heir to split them with. Emma, you really are heartless, he snapped. Aunt Sharon is reasonable and understanding, not like you always so much. No wonder Dad chose her over you. I didn't want to hear another word of his foolishness. I hung up. 2 weeks later, I saw a photo Henry posted online. Sharon was leaning gently against John, hand in hand with my grandson. The whole family, of 5, smiled blissfully together. The caption read, "My father has always been the role model of my life. In the second half of life, true love never left his side." It racked up hundreds of likes, and one comment quickly rose to the top. Someone wrote, "A few years ago while traveling in France, I met Professor John and his wife. Even back then, I could tell those two elderly people had a love that inspired admiration." Soon, more comments followed. One by one, people shared how they had encountered this couple in various years and places, piecing together the story from that very photo album. John and Sharon's love story even made trending news. Online users hailed them as the embodiment of growing old, together hand in hand. My son texted me, "See that, Mom? A happy family, blessed by all of social media. That's the very family you walked away from with your own hands." On the screen, I saw the words, "typing," but I waited over 10 minutes, and nothing more came. Of course, I never actually replied. For one, after 50 years of marriage, I didn't want to sever every last retreat he might have. And more importantly, I was only saying, with good food and good health, I believe I still have many beautiful years left to live. Won't waste my precious time on people or things that no longer deserve it. My life was peaceful, but things weren't quite as calm in John's world. After I left, Sharon moved in with him. At first, everything seemed blissful. John had finally reunited with his first love. My son found Sharon elegant and dignified. Even my grandson adored her gentle tone, cheerfully calling her grandma. But a home requires upkeep. Sharon had always lived in luxury, never lifting a finger for household chores. My son hurried to hire a housekeeper. Housework was covered, but someone still had to pick up and drop off the child. My daughter-in-law didn't feel comfortable entrusting that to a stranger. So my son asked Sharon. She agreed readily, smiling as she assured them they could go to work without worry. My son was full of gratitude. "I told you, Aunt Sharon is the best." She and Dad are both educated, completely different from the old-fashioned types. But within just a few days, Sharon nearly lost my grandson. That day, after school, she took him to the shopping mall and couldn't resist stepping into a clothing boutique. It took only a moment of carelessness, and the 7-year-old boy had vanished from sight. Panic-stricken, she called the police and alerted the mall security. Fortunately, after a frantic search, my grandson was finally found on another floor. Sharon was both furious and deeply shaken. Pointing at the boy, she scolded him harshly. "Didn't I tell you to stay right here in the store and wait for me? I only tried on 2 outfits. It was just a few minutes. Why did you run off like that?" My daughter-in-law arrived just in time to witness the scene. She said nothing then, her face unreadable, but once they returned home, she pressed my son to come and speak with me. He resisted. "Sharon never had children of her own," he reasoned. "She's never had to take care of a child before. A mistake like this is understandable, and I'm sure she'll be more careful next time." But later that night, John called my son with a gentle suggestion. Sharon had come home with unbearable back pain. Days of rushing about had taken their toll on her. Perhaps it was time to consider another arrangement for looking after the child. My daughter-in-law gave a cold laugh and insisted my son come to my house and apologize. "Mom, I was wrong before. Please don't take it to heart," my son said quietly, his head bowed. "But I was upset, and I said things out of anger. Didn't you push me to, back then?" I remained silent. He let out a strained laugh, glanced around my home, then stretched out on the new massage chair I had just purchased. "Mom, I have to say you really know how to enjoy life. I saw this massage chair at the mall. It costs nearly 90 million. You really went all out." I answered calmly, "Well, I got so much money from your father. If I don't buy the most expensive one, how would I ever spend it all?" He rubbed his nose sheepishly. "Mom, don't stay mad at me. You don't need your husband anymore, but surely you still need your son, right? Harry is your own grandson. I don't believe for a second you could turn your back on him." My daughter-in-law chimed in sincerely. Mom, Henry didn't mean to be ungrateful. I've been trying to talk sense into him for a long time. Matter what, we both know your support means the world to our little family. This time, Harry had such a close call he really don't dare entrust him to outsiders anymore. Mom, do you think you could? But I've already enrolled in the senior university, I replied hesitantly. From Monday to Friday, I'll be busy during the day. Tell you what, Tiff, there's no one to look after Harry on weekends. Just bring him over here. My son stared at me in disbelief. You enrolled in a senior university. When did that happen? Mom, you really do everything your own way. I looked up at him. I'm studying piano. I just bought a piano a few days ago. It's being delivered this afternoon. He frowned, clearly about to say something. But my daughter-in-law quickly pinched his arm and interjected with a smile. Mom, going to university is a wonderful idea. It's good for the soul. As for Harry, we'll find another way. The moment Sharon's name was mentioned, my daughter-in-law's expression turned frosty. She acts like she owns the place. She's rearranged everything in the house. Now it looks gaudy beyond words. And on top of that, she's clinging to Dad, pressuring him to register for marriage. Don't worry, Mom. I've asked Henry to speak with Dad. We're firmly against them getting married. When you were still living with us, all we had to do was focus on our work. We never had to worry about anything. But now, we're out all day. I have to rush Harry to daycare, and Henry's running errands for that woman. She even winked at me playfully. Word is, Dad hasn't agreed to marry her yet. They've even argued about it. Seems the old man still has a bit of sense left. It's one thing to have fun, but marriage, that's a different story. I let out a soft laugh and turned my attention to slicing fruit for my grandson. In the end, everyone has their own position. With differing perspectives come conflicting interests, and so naturally, the decisions will differ too. I didn't know why John had refused to register the marriage, but as for my son's family, their opposition was perfectly predictably after Sharon had nearly lost. Harry had the nerve to blame the boy for running off instead of acknowledging her own negligence. Any daughter-in-law would have taken offense at that. What I hadn't expected, though, was that not only were things tense at home between John and Sharon, but the two of them had actually ended up trending on social media. But this time, they weren't receiving congratulations from netizens, only waves of criticism. It all began when a former university friend of theirs came across the news and left a comment. Professor John and Sharon were truly the golden couple of our school days. Such a shame they couldn't withstand the pressures of reality and eventually went their separate ways. I remember during our class reunion a few years ago, everyone still felt sorry for them. And now they've reunited after all these years. That single stone cast into the water stirred 1,000 waves. Almost instantly, the internet was abuzz. Netizens began digging deeper into their story. Through the flurry of back and forth, a clearer picture began to emerge. It turned out that this so-called true love wasn't the classic tale of high school sweethearts who grew old together. Instead, it was a story of two people who had parted ways. Married, others Sharon, in fact, had been married twice and only then reunited with an old flame. Some voices rose in support. First love will always be first love. To still feel a spark after decades apart. What else could you call that but true love? But others typed bitterly from behind their screens. If first love is the only real love, am I the only one who feels sorry for Professor John's ex-wife? A sharper comment struck even deeper. I remember, netizens used to romanticize how Professor John and his first love traveled the world together for decades, but according to this old classmate, both of them still had their own families until recently. Doesn't that mean they were having an affair all along? Curiosity is a part of human nature, and that one comment opened the floodgates to a storm of controversy. People began piecing the puzzle together, matching whispers from insiders with timeline inconsistencies and old stories. Gradually, the entire truth surfaced, and just like that, public sentiment shifted. What had been admiration turned swiftly into condemnation. A famous professor involved in a decades-long affair. Unbelievable. Those of you still clinging to the idea of romantic love, go ahead, just don't be surprised if you end up with a man like Professor John. First love, disgusting. She knew she was the third party, and still carried on with it for years. Please, don't tarnish the word first love. It's supposed to be something pure, not something that gets dragged through the mud. The next time I saw John was when he was lying in a hospital bed. My son had called to tell me that John and Sharon had had a terrible argument. In the heat of anger, John collapsed and was now bedridden, unable to move. Mom, my son pleaded, just think of it as an act of kindness for the sake of the years you spent together. A day as husband and wife is worth 100 days of grace. Please, go visit him. I didn't want to go, but in the end, I decided to see him one last time, to bid farewell to an old companion from a long chapter of my life. John looked frail on that bed. Thinner than I remembered, his once salt and pepper hair now completely white. When he saw me, a weak smile spread across his lips. Emma, he said, you came. I'm so glad you came. I thought I might feel something then, sadness perhaps, or tenderness, but strangely, all I felt was an emptiness, a cold, distant hollow that settled deep inside. He reached out, trembling, toward me. Emma, I heard you're learning to play the piano. If I recover, I'd love to hear you play someday. New York, it must feel so new, so exciting. It's a pity I can't go with you, if I ever had the chance. I would have liked to travel there with you, just once. I frowned slightly. He began coughing, chest rattling. Then, catching his breath, he said, please, don't stop me, let me finish. These words have been sitting heavy in my chest for days. I'm afraid if I don't say them now, I'll never get the chance again. Ever since you left, I don't know why, but I keep seeing your shadow in the house, as if you never really left. I know it was my fault. I don't dare ask for forgiveness, but I keep thinking back to that day you asked me not to go, not to travel with Sharon. If I hadn't argued with you that day, if I'd come to my senses, could we have still been happy? At his mention of that conversation, a faint ache stirred in my chest. It dragged me back to that overcast afternoon when I sat alone on the floor, sobbing until I had no tears left. I shook my head, then spoke slowly. No, infidelity is in your nature. If your heart had been sincere, you never would have taken that trip with Sharon in 1998. Today you say you regret it. But regret is only what remains when the fantasy of a first love crashes into reality, revealing nothing more than a plain white grain of rice on the table. As for me, I left too quickly. That's the only reason I still feel foreign to you. You've always been like this, I said quietly, never knowing how to cherish what you have. All your life, you've only ever craved what you couldn't have. John drew a deep breath, closed his eyes for a long moment, then opened them again. His gaze was laced with bitter irony and quiet self-contempt. You're right, but Emma, we were together for 50 years. Don't you feel anything at all? We've shared nearly a lifetime. Do we truly have no way back? I gave a faint smile. John, can you turn back time? Can you give me back 50 years of my life, untouched, untainted? Why should I hold on to a marriage that betrayed me? Do you think so little of me that I'd be desperate enough to stay for that? He chuckled softly, voice ragged and hoarse. All my life, I've saved others. But in the end, even a doctor can't save himself. I'm left with nothing. I turned and walked away. As I pushed open the hospital door, I saw my son and daughter-in-law waiting outside. My son called out, Mom, reaching to stop me. My daughter-in-law said nothing, just bit her lip. Her eyes filled with a quiet sorrow. Later, I finally learned the reason behind the fierce argument that ended everything between John and Sharon. Sharon came to see me once more. She was dressed just as impeccably as the last time, but there was a fog in her eyes. Now gone was the calm, radiant confidence. She slid a glass of water across the table, toward me. Last time, you said you don't drink coffee. I remembered. So today I brought plain water. You've won, Emma. Her lips curled into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her complexion was pallid last time. I said you had John's marriage, but I had his love. Turns out I was far too naive. I've lost Emma. I'm leaving. I looked at her, lifted the glass, and took small, deliberate sips. She continued, almost speaking to herself. Do you know why we fought? The internet's tearing me apart, calling me shameless, saying I've been a mistress my whole life, an old woman with no dignity. I begged him. I told him he didn't need to marry me. I just wanted him to post a single statement, online. Just one sentence. That he and you had divorced 25 years ago. That one lie would have cleared my name, but he refused. He'd rather be ruined, dragged through the mud, than say his marriage to you ended long ago. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scold Herbie, 'cause in truth, she was the third woman. all her life, and she deserved every bitter word thrown at her. But just as the words were about to leave my lips, I swallowed them down. There are no winners or losers here, I said quietly. If anything, you lost your love, and I wasted an entire lifetime. Sharon left. John didn't die in the end, but his health declined rapidly. His memory began to fade. The doctors diagnosed him with Alzheimer's. No one could deny the legacy he left. In medicine, his achievements spanned decades. As he aged, wave after wave of former students came to visit him. Heads of departments took turns treating him, each doing their best. But none of it could change the truth. John no longer recognized familiar faces. He no longer remembered the past. Meanwhile, I studied diligently at the university for seniors. Even my teachers praised me. I could now play a full piece on the piano, and when I posted a video online, it garnered unexpected attention. I began traveling the world alone, though I had no one beside me. Standing before each breathtaking landscape, I felt something swell in my chest, something that had long lain dormant, a quiet joy. I boarded a flight to France to see the Eiffel Tower. The moment I landed, I received a video from my son. In it, John sat in a wheelchair, thick glasses perched on his face, gazing intently at a phone screen. He was watching a video of me playing the piano, a rendition of Dream Wedding. John, the man who had forgotten so much, began to cry. Tears rolled down his cheeks like a child's, as if that music had unearthed something buried deep within him. I felt no sorrow, no joy. The moment felt distant, as if it belonged to another lifetime. Before me stretched the vast and beautiful world, and John, the man who had entangled 50 years of my life, was now nothing more than a fading dream. A young girl smiled at me and said, "Hello, beautiful grandma." I smiled back. I was only 70, and even at 70, I could still begin a beautiful new life. The end. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, please give the channel a like and subscribe.